Welcome back to the Capes and Tights podcast right here on capesandtights.com. I'm your host, Justin Soderberg. And for those who are watching can see this, but if those are listening, they can't. I'm sitting here with my son, Nova. Want to say hi? Oh, no. Okay. I only brought Nova on here too because Nova's homesick with me, and Vladimir Popov, who came on to talk comics today, was willing enough to reschedule a couple of times due to illnesses and so on and so forth. So I wanted to show the reason why it took some time to get Vladimir on here. But Vladimir is a comic book artist and creator who has worked on titles like Highlander, Robocop, Fearscape, Port of Earth, Hellraiser, Ice Nine Kills, Yungblud, Where Monsters Lie, and so much more. Vladimir is a super talented artist and creator, and so he took time out of his day to talk to us from Serbia to talk about all things comics. But I focused a lot on Where Monsters Lie, one of my favorite comics of 2023. So check him out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all those things as well. But check us out there too, as well as follow us, rate, review, all that stuff on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and all that stuff. So yeah, this is Vladimir Popov talking comics on the Capes and Tights podcast. Enjoy, everybody. Say enjoy.
Hi.
Welcome to the podcast, Vlad. How are you?
Hey, thanks for having me, Justin. I'm good.
Good. Yeah.
Happy to be on a podcast.
It's fun because I've talked to people all over the world on the podcast. I did one for the comic Antarctica with that creative team over at Top Cow and Image. And at that point, I think we had 4 people on. So it was me and 3 other people. All other people were in a different country. So we had like a South American country. We had me in the United States. We had someone in like Scotland. There was someone in like Japan. And it was the funniest thing. It was the weirdest like fact that all of us were in different countries. And that's my first time talking to someone living in Serbia. So, well, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
We're worldwide on this one.
Yeah, America-Europe relations. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, so we're here to talk some comics and stuff. So it's been a hell of a week for me, personally and stuff like that. My son being sick, we had to reschedule. I was sick, had to reschedule. So finally, we're getting on here and doing this, and talking some fun world of comics, with you. And so, as we get started, how did you get into? You're obviously an artist, but like, were you a comic book fan your entire life too?
Yeah. I was a comic book fan pretty much my entire life. I started reading them around when I was 4, and I learned to read on Disney comics, and then I watched cartoons like Superman, Spider-Man, some European cartoons like Asterix, and then around age 7 or 8, I was like, this is cool. I'd like to try to do it. And then I started scribbling, 7 years old, started some drawing and doodling and everything. And my first comic books were influenced by Italian comic books, actually, by Italian comic book named Alan Ford. It's not much popular in US because it's mostly in Italian, but it was popular in Yugoslavia and Eastern Europe and the Balkans and this part of the world a lot. So that was my first style kind of of drawing. And then when I was around 13 or 14 years old, I learned to draw the Marvel way, the biggest book on comics. And that's when I got acquainted to superhero drawing. I learned to.
Sorry, I just tried to pull up
that. One, yeah.
I was like,
that's the one, yeah.
How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way by Stan Lee and John Buscema. So that's kind of funny. I just love how I was just looking on that shelf and I remembered I had it.
That's the one. And also I think they recorded a video. I saw that that was both of them talking the same book, going chapters all over. So that was my first educational book, and of course superhero comic books and everything. And that's how I got started. And then as I progressed, I was searching for books. For example, there is one really cool book on anatomy for artists by Bern Hogarth. That's a classic one. And also a really useful book that I came across around 98 or 99 was Learn Animation by Preston Blair. That's I think he was working, I think at Disney or Hanna-Barbera. I can't
Yeah.
remember, but that's like a the big book on animation and cartoons and like the whole doodles. So that
Mhm.
was a learning part in my teenage. Then I entered college. I didn't do much jobbing there because like studying and various jobs in 20s. And then but the passion for comic books was always there because I was reading and like the video game was booming early 2000s. So that was that was the focus. Like I studied IT on my university, so I was much more in that, and like I was in in comics as a hobby reader, collecting and learning and everything. And then around like the passion was always there, and I was like, I would like to try myself at like see if I can make it as a career.
Yeah.
Around the thought start to form around age 27. It was kind of like always there in the back of my mind, but that was like that when I was kind of like more determined to like go for it. And then I made a website. I started using that was like around 2000, 2009, 2009, 2010. I started preparing my portfolio. I made a website and started querying the publishers. Like I made a profile on digital webbing, the
Mhm.
old forum where everybody was connecting. And that's how I landed my first gig on that forum. And it was for a small publisher from Ohio, Broken Icon Comics. And then we worked together for like a year and a half. And we made some web comics. We made some comics. They made a convention there between Virginia and Ohio. I helped them as a community manager on that one. And then after that, I started querying, adding people on Facebook because that was the thing around 2011, 2012, before everything else. And I started adding people from the industry, how I was finding them through, and I was able to find the editors because when you're overseas in that time, that period, when the online wasn't so developed, the only way to find who is working on what was like if you had the comic book and see like the editor's name, and then you go online and Google, like Google was like okay with indexing everything, so I had in luck in searches. So that's how I found about like majority of publishers contacts, and I started talking with people, and eventually I landed a gig at Boom Studios. My first big gig was Hellraiser.
Hellraiser, yeah, it's a pretty cool book to be on as your first like like bigger book like that. That's a pretty cool book to
Yeah,
be on.
yeah. Well, it was. I mean, like I was 29 when I got it. Like in the age of life, like you're
Yeah,
29, so like you should be like having like experience in work and everything, which I did. But in terms of art, like you're like a toddler, like you're
yeah,
just starting, like so. That was like they were like, you want it, you got it, here we go. Now, do something cool. And
exactly.
I got a yeah, I got a lot of backup from Clive Barker through the
Mhm.
editors. We never met or had a direct contact, but he was like, give the guy space and let him see what he can do. So that was that was a good experience. I was super creative. I was super free to do, but I was always aware, like, that's a book, like that's licensed property, that's big.
Mhm.
So I always try to like get back to the previous issues and stay in the universe because that was the reader's experience. That's what people would expect to do. So
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
gave it a little bit of a
Absolutely.
spin on my own. I developed some tools and techniques and build experience, and we got a nice book. And
That's
after
awesome.
that, like, yeah, it just took over. One publisher, other publisher met people. We started doing work together. One of the biggest partners in crime is Andrea Muti.
Hmm.
Uh, you guys had a podcast before.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Andrea is he's one of my favorite artists of all time. It's insane. I mean, in the amount of styles and things that Andrea can do, it's just beautiful. And I love saying that to another person who is also an artist, but no, seriously, like I think a lot of people would agree with me that he's an unbelievable artist.
Man, like he found about me in 2013, and he was like, I have this cool book. I like your style. Let's see what we can do. And I did some color tests for him. He sent it to Dynamite, and we got like the book titled Noir about shadow and Miss Fury and Black Canary, like all those pulp characters with writer Victor Gischler. And that's
Mhm.
how we started. Like that was our first job together, project together. And then after that, like 10 years later, we got like under like 1,000 pages together on all sorts of project licensed and creator owned. So, and like he's an amazing human being and an artist and a great mentor actually.
Yeah.
So
It's an yeah, I absolutely stumbled upon that. That was a funny thing too, is a number of times on this podcast I've reached out to a publisher or a publicist and said, I'm interested in getting this person on the podcast. How can we make this happen? And then they'll throw in people, which is kind of funny thing. They're like, well, so the artist is available too. And that, I think that was the episode too, where it was like, well, Andrea can join you too. I'm like, what, how would I say no to that? No, I'm sorry, please. I don't want that much talent on the podcast. Like, please.
yeah,
It was an
yeah,
unbelievable experience
he
talking to him. So
well, I think like these types of podcasts are extremely important. This wasn't a thing like 5 years ago before
no.
pandemic, but it's really helpful because like we all are like scattered all around the world and in the States. I mean, like United States continent is like huge. It takes the
Mm,
same amount of time from Los Angeles to New York as is from New York to Amsterdam. Like
mm.
there is no difference in time, the length. So when you're scattered like that, this helps like to connect and to talk to people to meet. I always like consider like working on a comic book like part of a band. Like we jam together, we do
Yeah.
exchange ideas, and then we make a book that's like a nice reader's experience.
Yes.
So I don't
It's
know if
funny.
you
My number one country a couple weeks ago on rankings. I try not to look at the rankings that much because I just don't like to live off of that. Like I do this pure, like obviously it's not a financial benefit for me. I do it mainly to try to get word out about people's comics and things that I like, but also it's a fun outlet to have someone to just talk to about comics. And so to me, it's more of a passion.
yeah
So I don't ever want the numbers to actually adjust. Like, oh, I this was a really good episode, so I want to make sure I do more episodes like that. It's more like I'm going to do episodes that I want to do, whether they flop or they're amazing. They are what they are. I enjoy doing them. But when every once in a while I get an email, and it was Saudi Arabia was my number one country that week. Saudi Arabia,
no
for some reason, I didn't have any Saudi Arabian artists on, creators on. I didn't have anything. It was just some reason Saudi Arabia really liked the episodes that week. I don't know. It was weird, but yeah, it's all over the world. So
when
this
that
podcast,
happened.
I don't remember now. Now I have to go back and look at it. But it was honestly like maybe a month ago. But it doesn't mean specifically that
Oh,
the episodes that week were popular. It means or that episode of the week was that popular. It was episodes that were listened to that week. And so it's possible someone in Saudi Arabia heard an episode and then was like, I'm gonna listen to the entire catalog. And that bumped the numbers up because we were listening
mhm.
to a
Yeah,
lot in
yeah.
the Saudi Arabia
Also,
area.
also when you mentioned Saudi Arabia, there was in December in Abu Dhabi, there
Mhm.
was a comic book convention,
Mhm.
and I saw like a few Ryan Katie and I think Matt from Top Cow, like they went there and a few
Okay.
publishers. So you
That's pretty
might
cool, actually.
spike.
Yeah, who
Yeah,
knows?
it
But
was.
I do it as a passion. It's a fun thing to do. And if I can get, if think about it, if someone goes out there and purchases it as a trade paperback or a single issue of a book that you've done in the past, if one person does it, in my opinion, we did our job because that's one more person that might
Exactly.
become a fan of yours. Hopefully, hundreds of people do it, but like if one person does, I think it's a success on doing these things and making sure that people know about your books. And you've worked on some amazing books that are like, you're mostly on the independent side, but you have the licensed properties. You've done creator owned comics with other people. And you've worked with people like George Perez, and so on and so forth. But the ones that I know you from are Port of Earth with my buddy Zach Kaplan. That's a great book over there, and Andrea Moody. And Where Monsters Lie with Kyle Starks. And another artist that I absolutely love is Peter Kowalski. That like Peter on Where Monsters Lie, and then he did Carmen Line recently with Dennis Hopeless over at Mad Cave, and that was unbelievable too. I just absolutely love Peter's art. Yeah. So this is the one when we talked originally. I was like, Where Monsters Lie was the one that I was like, oh, I really like talk about that with Vladimir. Like this is a comic book that I really enjoyed and ended up on my top 10 lists or top 20 lists of the 10 lists. Top 10? Did I do top 20? No, I did top 10. Top 10 comics of the year. Where Monsters Lie actually ended up on that list. So it's pretty awesome. So you've had a wide variety of talent that you've worked with, but also like titles you've worked with. This is not like you only do creator owned, you only do licensed properties, you only do big two. You have like a mixture. That must be fun.
Actually, yeah, it is because when you're working on licensed property, you gotta follow the license,
Mm,
and there's a specific set of rules that you gotta kind of figure out how you're gonna approach that because it's most of the times it's multiple people who are involved in that, and some of those people you don't know. For example, we worked on Highlander,
mm,
and that was through IDW. So we made pages, then the editor sent it to the production company, then they had to like veto it, check it out, and give the green light so that we can go back and forth. So when it's licensed property, there's always that back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And sometimes you have revisions, sometimes they, maybe change a little bit of a vision or something. But it's an ongoing process. So that's different than, for example, creator own, like Where Monsters Live, where we were the ones who were like doing everything on it. Like
mm,
editor was like, "Yeah, this is the Dell, and just make it cool and make it on time and
mm.
go for it." And then you know uh, Piotr and I and Kyle and I, like, we talked, and everybody did their part, and everybody's like full creativity, and that's how we made the book. So in those terms, like, creator-owned comics are more like a, making a music, like band jamming in a basement. Like, we exchange some cool ideas and like, oh, that's cool, that's cool, that's cool. Let's put it in. That sounds nice. Let's do it. And like, license is more structured, and like you gotta figure out like the reader's expectations on that one. So it's a different approach, but equally both are interesting and both have their own challenges and makes you grow. So
Mm.
I like both approaches. And also when you get a licensed property, you get to play with some cool characters that you wouldn't
Yes.
be able to do otherwise.
Yes, and
So
that's a lot of times I think people I've talked to people who have drawn like Star Wars, for example, or TMNT or any of those ones. And it's like it is a dream come true. There is a small sliver of it where you don't like to always peek behind the curtain. Like being in the behind the scenes and making these things, you could piss people off. You know what I mean? Like depending on how the story goes, you're touching their sovereign
Yeah.
things. Like if people's a big Hellraiser fan and you do something in the comic book that kind of like doesn't jive well, they might be upset. So whereas in a creator side of a creative owned side is no one knows how issues 1 through 4 are going to go, but the creative team. Like there's no preconceived notion on what there is in a
Yeah.
book or how a character looks or acts or so on. And so I can see liking both sides of it, pinch me moments of I get to draw, I don't know, Adventure Time, or color Adventure Time. And then there's also moments where like, oh, I get to cool work on a creation that no one's ever seen what color the house is in this, community in Way Monsters Lie and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
you've colored a lot of things, including this one. You've colored artists like Andrea Muti. You've colored Peter. You've colored George Perez, just to name a couple. Honestly, I don't want to go on your whole thing. Is what's it like with artists with names like that and having to basically partner with them? I mean, I know creative teams when you're drawing lines with a writer, you're partnering with that person. But when you're partnering with the art side, it must be a little different when you guys are working together to create what the art looks like. Is it something that's nerve wracking, or is it just part of your job?
No, actually, it's I don't know. With pretty much everyone who I worked with, we kind of like clicked on a first basis, and then we talked, we exchanged ideas, and like a team colleague, like we grow the relationship, and then over time we learn each other's strengths and how challenges and how everybody like feels about something, and then we talk through, and there is a bond between us, and we can be free to create. Andrea
Mm-hmm.
knows what he can expect from me. I know what I can expect from him, so he can be free to say, okay, I can do like maybe more open panels, more line art, because I'm gonna put some into coloring inside, or Piotr can do something else. So in that way, with creators, you get to meet the people on the book, even when we like meet for the first time. and start collaborating like on issue one. Issue one is like, we trying to get each other to know each other. And then by issue 5 or 10, we're already like, we've been through a few pages, like,
Hmm.
and we know how to navigate that, and it's just like a flow. So that's my experience actually.
It must be, I say easier because none of this is easy for anybody to do. But like, if it's easier to do issues? Say, for an example, if we're talking Where Monsters Lie, there's 4 issues. You do all of the artwork or all of it through all 4 issues. I mean, you do the coloring in all 4 issues. So when you set up issue one, and by the time you get to 4, the colors of different things and what the artwork looks like and so on and so forth. When you just jump in and someone needs you to color in issue 5 or an issue 6, that means you then have to go back and read those first 4 issues, right? To make sure you're not screwing something up. You're not making as an
Yeah.
issue of, is it Immortal Hulk, where like it was like issue like 7 or something like that, where Captain America was accidentally colored red, like his suit was red, and it was actually like one of those ones that like because of that, obviously it was an error in the printing, so the comic book was worth a lot more. But obviously that's just a mistake because obviously people know what color Captain America's suit is. It's blue, but
Yeah,
the it was colored the wrong color, so you have to like make sure you don't do that. You know, you have to make sure you don't actually go in there
exactly.
and do something wrong. And so it must, like I said, it's not easy, but like easier to do all of the issues than it is to just step in and do a couple of issues, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it is. But on the other side, when you get into a fill-in, for example, if you get
Mm-hmm.
if it's mini series of like 8 issues and you get on issue 4, you kind of like get to experience the first 3 issues a reader.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind
Yes.
of like a bonus point.
It's exactly. You're like, oh, I got to read those issues. Now I get to color them. That's awesome. This
Yeah,
this is amazing,
yeah, yeah,
or
yeah.
so on.
But
That makes.
I do have to do that because like, sometimes you got to figure out what you're gonna do actually.
Mhm.
So it's a kind of like a homework in comics, if there's
with
such a thing.
with your variety of titles you've worked on and creators and things, when projects come across your desk nowadays, is it more of a what you want to work on? Is it looking like, obviously everybody's looking for work, we want to pay our bills and stuff like that, so like, if someone needs help on something that you're not over the moon about, it's a job, you might do it. But is it the title that you're looking at? Is it the creative team that you want to work around? Is it like what makes it so you pick a book to work on if someone were to call you and ask you to work on it?
Well, when I was a younger, more inexperienced and hungrier for work, I was kind of like more excited. I wanted to like work on specific titles, but through the age and like when I got to do licensed properties, when I got a lot of experience under my hand, nowadays it's just about like with whom I want to work. Like I would rather
Mhm.
work with people who I can have good chemistry and have a good balance and be able to express myself than to work on some licensed property with a creator who is not really flexible or is stubborn on the vision or
Mhm.
like something like that. Like I was always I had a few discussions on that, and then, so I might be sounding a bit different, but like if the creator is the owner of that, so
Mhm.
he's the boss. So okay, then it's tolerable. But if we are like equally like owning if we are in together in the
Yeah.
creation process, then it needs to be some tolerance. Because if a writer wants to be the one who controls everything, then go and write a novel.
Yes.
This is a collaborative thing. Like
Yeah.
it's all part of adaptation. Like the writer writes a script, the artist adapts that script. Then I come in and then I adapt the line art. Then the writer comes in and he adapts the script because of the art. So it's kind
Mhm.
of like a circle, and then we get that into print. So yeah, it's between the people, but most of the times, like I did so many work, and now I know a lot of people. So basically, I'm always full, and
Mhm.
it's an enjoyable process for me.
That's awesome. It's just so
But
much
I'm
fun to be able
always
to
open
love
to
what you
open
do.
new people. Yeah.
You were saying, sorry, go ahead.
Well, but I'm always open to finding people
Yeah.
to experience new things, and yeah, it's kind of like a Karate Kid, like wax in, wax out, like.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things that like I don't know if I like throwing mixtures into things. So if like all of a sudden all you did was ever work with Andrea, or all you ever did was work with a specific creator, and it might get to the point where you're like, well, I kind of need to branch out a little bit. Or someone who's worked for Marvel their entire life, sometimes just be like, I just need to do an independent book just to be away from superheroes for a little bit. And so like I can see where, you know, you need, and the ability to be an artist and work with other writers. It's like you're not the one having to create everything from the ground up. Like you can work with a team with someone else. But so it's like it could be nice to be able to say, I just want to go over here and maybe just color Andrea Muti's lines. Let's just do that. I'll just do that this time. It'd be fun. I work with him. It's a cool title. And so on. But so yeah, I like having that mixture. So if I was you, I would want the mixture too, a little bit of everything and so on and so forth. And that's why I don't understand, honestly, as a big Marvel head over here, I don't understand some people who can only draw Marvel characters their entire lives. I'm just like, come on, you need to get some other things in there to mix it up. I mean, the paychecks are probably
Well,
nice, but I'm just saying, like,
like skill is one thing,
yeah,
creativity is
yeah,
also skill, which is another. And then, maybe somebody, is good at what they do. It's a job,
yeah. It's job.
pays
That's the other part of it.
bills.
Yeah,
So
I think it's
when
a lot
you're
of people
going
don't
like
understand it's a job.
freelance, yeah,
But
I mean,
sorry,
like with art, it's tricky. If you go into finance or something, like you're set to go. Like whatever you do, you're going to be paid, and that's the job on the system side. This is a creative side. So when you go, if you I don't know, have like three kids and two mortgages or something, like
yeah,
like a lot of stuff behind your back, and you're an artist, and I don't know, you live in more expensive state in US, for
yeah,
example, like you don't have really room to experiment with the geeky sci-fi from your teenage
yeah, yeah.
years that might take off or might not take off in True Image or some other program.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
in a
makes
way, I
sense.
can understand that where people do come, but I think like if you can always find a way. I mean, you can do commissions, you can do like sketches, like sketchbooks. There are ways to express your creativity even if you don't have time for that.
Mm.
So
That makes sense. It does.
yeah,
Yeah, I can
and
see
some
that.
people are
I can
just
see that.
yeah casual doing maybe some superhero stuff. So yeah.
Well, and you see that you see the people who are like potentially someone who, you know, does superhero stuff all the time. You do see that every once in a while on their Instagram or their Twitter,
Mhm.
like they just post, you know, a picture of them drawing Spawn, or they draw, you know, some other character that's not their own property. They just want to get it out there and show it. And a lot of times, I know some artists who, like a lot of their, you know, I love. I'm friends with Ben Bishop, who does the artwork for the Last Ronin, or some of the artwork for Last Ronin. And a lot of times, if he has a sketch for someone, they pay him to do a commission, and they're like, "Can you do The Walking Dead?" And he's like, I don't even do The Walking Dead, but they just want they love The Walking Dead. They love my art style, and they want to see a character in The Walking Dead. So I'll draw it. That's you know, when I have time,
Yeah.
and so on and so forth. So he gets to play in that, even if he doesn't get to actually do, you know, day to day artwork in The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
You know, comic book. Obviously it's not around anymore, so that's not. It's hard to draw The Walking Dead if it doesn't exist anymore. But that's it doesn't, and they're reprinting of it, but you know, it doesn't actually exist in new issues. But yeah, so you got on Where Monsters Lie. Again, that's the I would say in my reading is my favorite of all the work you've done. And that's mainly just because I love this
Thank
entire
you.
creative team. And that's because Kyle, I think, is a wonderful comedic writer, but he's also a wonderful horror writer. And I think a lot of people don't give him as much credit on his horror side as he does his comedy side. And with Where Monsters Lie, it's like a mixture of the two. Like it's just there's the jokes in there, but there's also some like crazy good artwork that's gruesome, and working on
Yeah.
a book that has things like not to spoil it for anybody, but like eyes getting stabbed out of the head with a ice pick. Like there, that must have been some fun time working on this book, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah, yeah, like that's one nice, interesting, casual, everyday, mundane book with an occasional bizarre kill. Like,
Yeah.
like nothing to see here. Like,
No,
look at
I
that,
love it too.
you
I
gotta
read
cut some
most of
grass
my
over there.
books. I read most of my comics when I'm going to bed at night. You know, a lot of times I get them, like a lot of these, like Dark Horse and things like that. We get advanced copies, and I'm reading the digital PDF on my iPad, and the lights are off and I'm getting ready to, I'm falling sleepy and all of a sudden I know where I just see someone's eye get stabbed out with an ice pick. I'm like, cool, I'm not gonna sleep tonight. That's awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it, guys.
All right. Well, I'm glad we made you like,
It
wise.
chills a little bit, like it's pretty
Yeah.
funny on that. But no, it's a cool concept, of where serial killers go to spend their downtime and what happens when someone doesn't pay attention to the rules and things like that. And there's a little bit more to it and so on and so forth. Kyle's come on the podcast to talk about comics in general and stuff like that too. And I was saying that the biggest thing to me is the fact that a lot of people are probably going to see this and be like, I don't like comedy comic books. And I'm like, no, it's not that. Read it. Read it. It's not, it's more than that and like it. But yeah, it's beautifully done. I think again, the artwork is amazing, and so on. And then the other one would be Port of Earth. It's a great book over by Zach Kaplan. That's actually, I think it's coming out in trade paperback here pretty soon, isn't it? Didn't I just see
June
that's
or
coming?
July, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah, they
which is
announced it
awesome to
like a
hear.
week or
Yeah, that's a great thing
hardcover
to see.
deluxe, everything.
Yeah.
So
Uh, what was it called? Port of Earth. That's another book again. I just caught my attention because I struggle sometimes to get the entire creative team in my head. Like I can remember a lot of times just the artist or just the writer or just the letterer or just the colorist or one a mixture of the two. And when I go through and read things, I'm like, oh yeah, that's no wonder I like that comic book. It's because this team was on it or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it's no wonder I
yeah,
you finish a movie and you're like, oh, that was a great movie, and then you go back and look at the director, you're like, well, no crap, I like that movie. It's because it was directed by so and so. But yeah,
yeah,
same thing with the
exactly.
creative
I
team.
feel it totally on that. I have
Same thing with
that
the creative
same
team.
when I look at the artwork.
Mhm.
Like, who's that guy? I can't remember, but I know the artwork.
Well, yeah, I was trying to figure it out right now, but I know they were re-releasing it in trade paperback format, but I don't remember is who put it out there that said
July,
that.
I think,
Is it
or
July?
June.
Okay. I was just trying to
Maybe
get it out
June.
there.
Maybe June.
Um, it
Maybe
doesn't matter.
Instagram.
It's funny about that is because it doesn't matter because of the fact that all these dates always change anyway in the world of comic books. So
Yeah.
no printers of comic books have never run out of paper or
Just the
August.
flow of life.
Oh, that's not it. That's the new printing. It says, where's the new printing? No, that's the old printing. Huh? It's coming back out in print, guys. Everybody just let everybody know that at some point. Check it out. I was trying to
Yeah.
be helpful here, and and help promote it, but I guess I didn't look it up early enough. But Top Cow should have more information on that out there. Top Cow's
Yeah, they'll
amazing.
have
So
it on their website and
yeah,
socials.
yeah. But it's just check that out because Port of Earth's amazing. Where Monsters Lie is available in trade paperback as well at most comic book shops. The best thing about trades in the United States, around the world, really, is that trade paperbacks are available in bookstores, whereas single issue comics are only allowed in places that sell like local comic book shops and things like that. So when it hits the trade paperback market, like where Monsters Light is right now, is that it's now book. You can go to your local bookstore if you don't have a comic book shop. You can go to your local bookstore and just be like, I want this trade paperback, and they can get it for you, which is great if they don't already have it in stock, which is always fun. Or you can go online and get it because just get a shop your local place or with your creators. Like if Kyle has it on his website or someone has it on their website, grab it there. But if you can't, just go to Amazon, people. Just buy the book.
Amazon is international. Like
Yes,
I think
just buy the book.
they're doing the distribution through Penguin Random House, and Penguin
Yep.
is like transglobal. Like they're
Mhm.
everywhere. So if you go to
Yeah.
Dubai, you might pick it up. Like
Yeah. See, there you go.
so, yeah,
Everywhere.
I found my other book in Dubai.
Really?
Yeah, so that was
That's awesome.
yeah.
And so you've covered most of the books out there that are on your resume of sorts have your coloring on it. Is there something that strikes when you go into start doing a book? Do you start putting a palette together? How do you start this process of actually coloring a book?
Um, I kind of have like in a way think, feel, think kind of process. I check the script, I check the line art, then I think about it in which direction I would like to go. For example, when it comes to Where Monsters Lie, I decided to go in two directions. First one was to check out Norman Rockwell's paintings. It's the American
Yeah.
painter, one of the more famous ones, with his realism and everything. And I went online on YouTube to check out Jeffrey Dahmer's interviews. I think like TV show was coming up at that time when we were doing production, and
Yeah.
I saw it and I was like, I wanted to Google who the guy is, and then when I saw the interviews, that was like chilling. Like that was really chilling experience online, and I was like, that's it, because the book had a mundane, and the interview was like Jeffrey was sitting in a prison room. There was a journalist next to him, and he was talking casual, like we were doing. Like he was exchanging recipes for a soup, except he was talking about his, victims. So that was like, and he was fully aware what he was doing, and like
Oh
that's
yeah.
like that kind of like mind bugging, mind fuck
Yeah.
is a moment where you're like, well, that's chilling, and that's the stuff that like goes into these comic books. That's it. Like this is a comic book where like they walk, talk, and like do crazy stuff, bizarre stuff, like
Hmm.
eye popping and all that, like aside. So that's how I approached. That was the thinking phase, and then when I
Okay.
was going to coloring, the mechanics behind me, like the filling phase is like I color and then I visualize in my head like how I want to see the scene. And then I true feeling like, okay, this is like nice green palette. Maybe I could do it like more darker, more and like back and forth with myself and how my internal gut feel, how I think the scene should go. And then when I get that zing, like, okay, this is it, this is good. Then I finish the page and move on to the next one. And then I go the think feel process again. And then when I finish the whole book, I go like another thinking process to see all the pages, if everything connects together, if I haven't missed something somewhere, or like consistency in saturation and coloring and all of that, like panel layouts. So that's my approach to like pretty much every book that I do. And I use the wheel. I have like those small, and I color in Photoshop, so I have those small like squares with predefined colors if I really need to pull something up. But most of the time it's like that color wheel or the color square, and then I pick up what I want. I most of the time know how this work in the situation, where how it goes, like the sections. So that's how I pick up the colors. And also that's not only there is like layers and then transparency and filters and like all of that stuff to get that unique look for the specific book. Plus
Yeah.
brushes, I do design my own brushes, custom
Okay.
brushes for not for every project, but where I think it's suitable, I do. I have some old brushes for different kind of like weather conditions, snows, rains, like 5 different types of rain and weather, fog, like so those kind of things to use and like make the visual style unique.
Hmm.
When it comes to rendering, I use I also have my own style of rendering. Like 10 years ago, I played with like I took the lightning and I took a beast ahead, and then I was playing with lightning and doing photo screens to make my own references to see how I want to like shadow something. Most of the shadowing when you go through like is pretty much standard, but like those small nuances and details, and then when you do that to yourself, like on your face, so that's how like all those small details to make it like the technicalities that people most often do not notice, but like it makes art
Hmm.
what it is.
Hmm.
And then like over the years, it's a training. You kind of learn your tools and tricks, like you know all those skills, and then it's a muscle memory, and then you feel like, okay, for this one I'm going to do that, like
Hmm.
shadow number 17, for example. Kind of like like kind of like my own 22 panels that always work,
Yes. Yes.
except I haven't made it in an Excel sheet. I might do that at one point.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's awesome. So it's a fun. I think it's funny is that it's like I hate to say it makes our job easier, but as an artist, I'm a graphic artist by trade during the day, and the internet and YouTube and references to things have made jobs so much more made us do our job better, if that makes any sense. I don't want to say the word easier, but I want to say it makes us be able to do our jobs better because of the fact that
Yeah.
you being able to look up Jeffrey Dahmer's videos and so on and so forth. 20, 30 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, it would have been a lot harder to try to find those movies or those interviews because you had
Yeah.
to like watch them on TV when they came out or recorded them or knew someone or something like that. Whereas, you know, nowadays with the ability to just be like, I need to know this. And you look it up and it's like, okay, now I can reference that, whatever it may be. The funny thing is also, I think I talked to an artist once who said there's so many pictures on their phone of like selfies in weird positions and weird lighting so that they they know what to do for shading and things like that. And I'm just like, if someone ever like if you ever get like someone murders you and they like look at your phone, you know, like what is with this person? And all it is these weird pictures of you selfie because they're like working in your studio, it's hot out, you have no shirt on or whatever, and they're just taking a photo. Yeah, it's an interesting
Honestly, I don't think there is such a thing as normal gallery on a phone of everybody like today.
yeah.
Like I don't think that exists. Even if it does, what it would be. I mean, like
I feel like it'd be a
you
great
just don't
photo
go
book.
and look
Yeah. Don't look at someone's photos in
people's
their phone.
galleries. No,
No,
you don't do
don't do that.
that.
But yeah, so are you that's awesome hearing from someone who is an art so an artist who specifically draws lines and doesn't actually do a lot of their own coloring or the opposite or whatever. It's nice to hear um from the other segment of comics. If people don't see the four titles of names on a cover, a lot of people don't. Your average consumer or new consumer in the comic book industry might not know what that means. They might not know that, you know, when you see Kyle Starks on there, what does Kyle do? Some people think that the creator of a comic book is the person who does everything. And some people do. We're not going to take away from that. There are people who write, draw, color, letter, all that stuff. They're crazy. I'll say that right now. They're absolutely insane because having a team to work with you makes your life easier.
Well,
So,
sometimes that's a nice thing to do. Like,
yeah.
sometimes I think everybody should like have every creator should have like 10 pages that he completely did himself, because that's how you learn the process of making. Like
Mhm.
that's the cycle, you have to you don't have to learn every step of the process, but if you do, you can like it's easier to navigate with everybody. Like you'll be more
Yeah.
comfortable, and like there's benefits to it. Let's say it like that.
I think I've heard. I think it was my buddy Joseph Schmalke who said to me once. He's like, also I can do everything. So he does his book 7 Years in Darkness. It's out right now on CEX Publishing. He does write, draw, color. He has someone else edit every one of his books, which is really necessary because that has ability of having another name or another person to look at your book, look at your work. But he stopped lettering his own books. He says, I'm not any good at it. And why not hire someone who's good at it to do it? And so there you go. That's the way to do it. If you can do it, doesn't mean you should do it. And that means that if you were really good at illustrating and coloring and lettering a book, get someone to write your book. If you're good at writing books, but you're not good at coloring it, get someone to do that. But if you can do it, yes, it's fun to do. And again, you mentioned doing it all helps you learn the process, but in the end, sometimes do what also makes you happy. So if you're not happy doing the rest of the stuff, get someone else to do
Yeah,
it for you.
but I mean, like if you have like 1 year to do like five
Yeah.
issues, then I mean that's okay by all
Yeah.
means. Like go. Yeah, I mean it all depends. Like what what do you want? But like for the book to be functional in the United States on a monthly level, you you have to do
Yeah.
as a team, especially in today's world when like you have content everywhere. Like why would somebody go and pay $5 for 20 pages of comic book? You
Mm-hmm.
know, when he can like go on TikTok and browse forever everything free, or YouTube, or like for $5 he can have Netflix or any other kind of subscription or play video. Like there is so much more content like than before 30 years. So
The comics are awesome. So I think that's the reason why people should buy comics is because they're amazing. But I will say that I was
yeah,
in a
they
slump
are.
this week because my son has been sick. A lot going on at work. My wife is 34 weeks pregnant, so we got another month or so before we're having our baby, our second child, and so there's just a lot going on in my life.
Congratulations in advance, man.
Thank you very much. But there's a lot going on. So last night with my son being sick and I barely gotten any sleep, I wanted to put something up on the website about Ed Brisson's new book, The Displaced. And I was just like, I can't get myself to read it just because I don't want to take the time to do that right now. I just want to sleep, whatever. Force myself to, in a sense. Like forcing myself to. Like, obviously I didn't force it. I want to read comics, but and I'm so glad I did, because it was amazing, and everybody should read it when it comes out, because it's absolutely wonderful. Actually, when this episode drops, it comes out today. I know it has nothing to do with Vladimir here, but like, it's unbelievable. So even if you feel like you wake up one day, you're like, I don't want to read comics today, pick one up, because it might be the best comic book you've ever read. So get into comics and read comics, in my opinion.
I
And
think I think as a creator that comic books are the, if not the most important form of art, then one of the top three. But I think
Mhm.
it's the most important one because in comic books you have pretty much summary of every other type of art. Like you have a filmmaking through the panel direction, you have writing through, like you can do poetry, you can do fiction, you can do prose, you can even do like textbook in a comic book.
Mm.
I mean, Google has a textbook comic book that explains how Google works, for example.
Yeah.
You have to learn to do the architecture, like
Mm.
costume design, like all that stuff. And then even like, it's considered, it is a performance art because you have to sit down and draw the same way you have to like go and play an instrument. So
Mhm.
in a way, it's most complex and most important because it boosts your creativity. It's nice to see
Yes.
pictures. And it's kind of like a universal language, and it connects people. That's how actually comic books started and formed in the United States, like in 1890, like because
Yeah.
somebody drew a panel and somebody extended that, and then the stories were about the immigrants who came at the late 19th century, so they can connect and educate and like just
Yeah.
survive to the experience together. And that's what comic books do today, like all around the world, like us and everything else, like, through the passion and all that. So
Early on in
they're
the
necessary.
podcast, this is episode 151 of the podcast, but early on, like episode within the
Nice.
first 20 episodes, I had Ian Rosenberg and Mike Cavallaro on the podcast to talk about this book, which is called Free Speech Handbook, and it's about the history of free speech in the United States. But it's a history book, basically. It was researched and all that stuff, but it's a comic book, and so like that's the thing, is like
Nice.
comics are in everything. Stan Lee's biography is in comic book form. There's so much that, I mean, Kate Beaton wrote this book, which is a comic book, but it's about her life. So like it's about, the comics are in everything, I think, and I think that they're worth reading.
Yeah.
And I think we're preaching to the choir probably on this one, because let's be honest, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably read comics. But the ones that I would highly recommend you pick up is Where Monsters Lie. I'll tell you that
And
right
if you
now.
don't read comics, give them a chance.
Or buy them for
You
someone
might
else.
like them.
I don't like comics, but you can have it. I'll buy it for you. No. And then also Port of Earth, like I mentioned, Port of Earth is a good one, but obviously anything that Vladimir's touched has honestly been good. So I will say that you are an unbelievable artist
Thanks.
and creator in your own right. You've partnered up with a bunch of good names, but you're in there too. So if I were to talk to Andre, I'd be like, you remember when you worked with Vladimir? And he'd say, yeah, I love that guy. So you're up there. Don't worry. Um, so
Oh,
grab
no
those
worries.
books. They're available, like I said, trade paperbacks and things like that. Are you working on anything? Obviously you might not be able to say what it is. Are you working currently on
I'm
something right
working
now?
right now. Yeah, I'm working on a few projects.
Okay.
I can't say about anything yet, but I can say about my personal project that I'm working on beside the hard stuff. And this
Okay.
one is not a comic book, but it is about comic books.
Okay.
So this is the section that I haven't mentioned, but in 2019 I enrolled in PhD studies of contemporary arts and media, and because I'm a huge fan of social scientists, social sciences, and
Mhm.
I started writing a doctoral thesis on comic books, on American comic books specifically, from the social science and with a philosophical approach. So I'm writing a textbook. So that's a project that I can talk about a little. I'm currently writing chapter 2 and 3. So yeah,
Okay. That's awesome.
I'm hoping that I'm going to finish the first draft by this year, and hopefully maybe by the end of 2025 or 2026, I'll have the English version that will be available for worldwide.
That's
I
awesome.
think it's going to be an
Little
interesting
light
book
reading,
because
right?
it's yeah. I'm going to try to make it like for
Okay,
the
great.
end reader because that's the point.
Yeah.
First chapter is, for example, historical in value, like some context, some
Yeah.
symbolics of comic books, how they So it's a bit of a, let's say, a dry read, but it's a serious,
Hmm.
much more serious read because it's a kind of like a scientific book.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
sometimes, but it's education on comics and also my way to like give back to the community.
Yeah, that's
So it's
awesome.
interesting.
That's
Yeah.
so cool. You have many talents over there, Vladimir. You got many talents.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
not a single talented person.
Well,
Plenty of them.
I was kind of like a nerdy kid most of my life, so still am. So, you know,
That's awesome. I'm looking forward to it. So, and
curious.
I'll keep my eye out personally, but everybody else should keep their eye out. Who listens to this podcast about Vladimir Popov's name on things? If you see it, check it out because it's probably worth picking up. I mentioned earlier, and we've talked about this on this podcast. Is the people you've worked with are also unbelievable. So, like in all likelihood, if your name's on it, then everybody else that's in that probably going to be pretty talented lineup of creators there. So check that out. But I'm still going to hammer home that you should all buy Where Monsters Lie from Dark Horse Comics because that's one of my favorite comic books that came out last year, and there's just I just can't find a flaw with it. So that's a big thing.
Also, if we're gonna advertise it a little bit more, Where Monsters Lie was nominated for the Bram Stoker's Award.
Mm-hmm.
So, and also it was one of the top 10 horror comic books overall for 2023 by Comic Book Resources and
Yes.
Comixology. So
Yep.
like kind of like that. It
See,
like took off. Like
I'm
nobody
not
knew,
st-
nobody was expecting it, but
I'm not on an island here. I'm not the only one that says this, people. The people that actually matter out there have said this as well. So I will hope
yeah.
for we win a Bram Stoker award. That'd be amazing. That would be so wonderful.
I mean, they're
I've had
so awesome. They have like these small statues as a prize, like the castle that was like
Mhm.
amazing. I was like, I'd like to win it just for like the statue.
That's
Just
amazing.
because the statue is cool.
That'd be awesome. Like
But even
everybody else is out there putting it in a closet somewhere. And you've got it like on your coffee table so people can see it when
yeah,
they come
next to my
over. Look at
laptop,
this.
like yeah.
That's awesome.
Uh,
But yeah, so you know what? It's been so much fun. I'm so thankful that you actually rescheduled with me not only once but twice because of things
no
that
worry,
have come
man.
up, illnesses and so on and so forth. Appreciate you taking the time out of your day or your night to talk to us about comics and so much more. Be sure to check out Vladimir on what you're on Twitter and Instagram, right? At
Twitter,
Vladimir.
yeah, X, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook.
Yeah,
So
check all those places out.
yeah,
Check out your
pretty much
artwork
there.
and yeah, thank you so much again. Appreciate you taking the time out.
Thank you so much for having me. Was a pleasure. Was enjoyable. So we can do it again sometime in the
Yeah,
future.
we
I
should.
wouldn't
We
mind.
should.
Like I have
I'll
like
reschedule. I'll
Brazilians.
reschedule like 4 times that time though. Okay, we got to make
That's
sure that
okay. That's
like
okay. Yeah.
I really appreciate it, Vladimir.